Hi, Money Magicians. Welcome to another episode of the Money Magic Podcast. We've taken about a 2-month break so that I could do the fireside chat. So, welcome back to episode 79. So, with me is an incredible guest. Her name is Amel. Hello, Amel. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing fantastic. I'm very excited to be here with you all. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, wow. No, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Um, so, Amal, please tell us, who are you as a soul? How would you define yourself as a soul? And what do you do for a living?
I love this question. It's such a beautiful way to put it. So I define often myself as a global citizen or a global nomad. I am homeful and homeless, and I would say homeless and homeful at the same time. I've been I come
Mm.
from Algeria, which is north of Africa, and I've been born in India and been raised across countries. And it's always been difficult for me to define what home is. Hopefully, with time,
Mm.
things started being more clear to me about that definition, but it's been a quest for many years. And it's actually very much related to the business I do, although it has nothing to do with that. But we'll get to that. But yeah, for me, that's in few words, I would say global nomad and global citizen. And I'm all about I just love what makes me the most excited and joyful is when I meet people with those special talents and when people live up to their full potential. This is what makes me the most excited when I get to see that. And
Mhm.
otherwise, professionally, I'm a business and marketing coach, and I actually help people either start or grow an existing business that is portable and that is aligned with their lifestyle. For me, it's really important to help my clients build a
Mm.
business that works around their lifestyle instead of doing the other way around.
Mm.
Our society has taught us to make our lives fit to whatever context we're living in or need to live with. I think it's important to start first with who we are, what we want to do with our life, and make things fit around it, including our business and how we run it.
This is amazing. Wow, wow, Amal. This is amazing.
I'm so
I
happy
love
you
it. I
resonate with
love,
that. I guess you know what it is, right? You've been doing that the whole life, I guess.
yes, I actually wanted to jump right into that and just reflect on what you said about feeling homeless and homeful. Um, I find that to be just such a fascinating thing because I feel like I'm definitely never without a home, but at the same time, it's hard to say where home is. I was reading on a meme on Facebook, and they were saying that when you travel, you leave pieces of you behind in every country with different people in those countries. And I definitely feel that. It just feels like so many countries have my soul. So many people in those countries have my spirit and my soul.
Oh
And
yeah.
it is something else. Wow.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that, I remember, and that's how once I was asked to write a piece about what it is, like how to define my identity as a global nomad, and that's
Mm.
I started writing my story how I never had a home, and by the end I was talking about how hopeful I was still, and I realized actually I'm homeful, not just hopeful, right? And I
Mm.
realized, like you said, we leave a piece of us in every country, but as well,
Mm.
we take a piece of us with us and we
Mm.
build a piece of us with us every time we move
Oh,
from a country to
wow.
another. So leaving in country is at the end almost as powerful as arriving in a new one because you leave with so much more than what you came with. And I think
Mm.
that's also what makes it home full. Like we're full of that richness that we would never had if we actually never lived in that place and never met with all these people who are so different from us.
Mm. Wow, I never thought of it that way.
I'm so happy.
Wow, that's so very true when you say that we always leave a piece of us behind, but we also take a piece of us, a piece of the country with us. I
Yes.
just think of how my palate in terms of food has changed so dramatically. Like, I'm
Yeah,
such a foodie, right? But not only that, but like, you leave with such a different perspective. You leave with different ways of seeing the world. And I always say to people, like, I'm glad, like, I'm a nomad in the sense that I get to live and stay in countries. I don't just whiz through. And nothing
exactly.
wrong with whizzing through, right? But I'm not there just for 5 days, because I think that when you're there just for like a few days, a few weeks, you get a sense of the country, but not what it is like to be in the country, not to be with the people, not to get frustrated at the way things work. Like, you don't get to
Exactly.
really experience the frustration of the locals, because you then become a
Yeah,
sort of local at the end. So you're like, oh my gosh, not this again. So
exactly.
it's such a beautiful, beautiful experience. I
I think
love
the
that.
test is when you start getting the humor and making the jokes that nobody else would understand. And then you think you're the
Yes,
funniest person, but if only those people from that country were with you, because these people don't get it. And that's, I think
exactly.
that's when you know you're integrated, is when you get those jokes.
Exactly. That's so true. Hey, I like you complaining about politics in one country, but like people in another country don't get it. And
Yeah.
you're just like, no.
Oh.
So I get that. And I also think that when you've lived in different countries, it changes who you are, and so on such a fundamental level.
Mhm.
Like, I think that I'm now a lot slower to make judgment, to come to conclusions, because when you've lived in different cultures and things are done in so many different ways, and people are reaching conclusions for different things in a different way, it influences how you also start to think and see the world, which is really, really lovely.
Yeah,
I think,
100%.
anyway.
Yes,
So
100%.
you are a nomad. I think this is the first time on this podcast, apart from when I'm talking about nomads and my nomadic lifestyle, where I've really, really spoken about, had a fellow nomad on.
Mhm.
So I actually want to ask you, because this is a question I get asked all the time. How did you get started on this lifestyle?
Well, unlike you, which I admire so much, I don't feel like it was my choice.
Ah,
Like I feel like it was my destiny. I'm gonna just, which
ooh,
is a perfect segue maybe to introduce a little bit about my story, because I remember you were asking me to do that.
yes.
Um, I I was born of Algerian parents to Algerian parents who are diplomats. So when I was born in India, they were
Ah,
posted there. And I was basically raised my whole childhood moving from a country to another. And by the age of 15, I was telling to my parents, at the age of 15, I was already telling them, you're ruining my career. I was like, because we would keep changing countries, and then I would keep changing school systems and even languages. And I was feeling so confused. I actually
mm,
never learned one language from A to Z. I always was a beginner or like an outsider wherever I would go. And by the age of, I was
wow.
like, okay, now I need a stable education because I want to have a successful
Yeah.
career and I need to go to a stable school. Anyways, it took me 1 year to convince my parent. At the time, we were living in Uganda and I loved it
Oh,
so much.
wow.
It was one of my most beautiful memories was living in Uganda
Yeah.
as a teen, but I knew that it was time to go because the educational system, I was basically doing my high school by correspondence with a
Oh,
French
wow.
ministry. So it was like a system where they send you by mail the courses and you have to send your exams back. It was just insane. You would
That is
pass
crazy.
exam in the embassy. Anyways, it was just, I was like, this is not sustainable. So I convinced my parents and they let me go at the age of 16 to France to finish high school there on my own. So I lived on my own at the age of 16. So that's where
Wow.
my
In a
nomad.
boarding school, or
No,
you
no,
had
no.
an apartment?
So this is the funny part. My parents did not want me to go to a boarding school. I'm Muslim and I come from very, strict
Ah,
culture, although things have changed. My parents have evolved since, but they were like, no way, no boarding school. It's all about sex and drugs. And then they put me in a Catholic, which I'm Muslim, and they put me in a Catholic Jesuit school,
no.
hoping that that will be less sex and drugs. You're kidding. And and that's all you would find around at the courtyard of the school. But basically I would go to this private high school, and I would go home in my small studio, and I was not allowed to tell anybody that I lived in the studio, and in a small,
Of course. Can you
yeah,
imagine being in
so
high school and living on your own? So they let you live on your own.
I can't believe how they did it, how much courage it took from them. I will never, like, when I think about it back then, I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, they trusted me and they
And
did it, of
you're a
course.
teen in France. Come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, it's not like I was completely abandoned. I had an uncle living in that city, and he would come every
Yeah.
night to check under the bed if there was a boy or in the shower. So,
Oh
so it's not
no.
like I was left. But it was so strange because I would go in the weekend to the mall shopping when then I would meet and getting my basket full of fruit and detergent to clean the apartment, and I would meet with my schoolmates who would go to the movies. It was like, we literally have two different lifestyles. This is not it was so weird, right? It was just so weird. But it was hard. It was really hard, because there was obviously a disconnect. I had a different lifestyle. I was actually closer to my teachers than to the schoolmates. But at the end of the day, I made some great friends.
Because
Yeah.
you were basically an adult, a mini adult. So did you know how to? So your schoolmates never knew that you lived alone.
It took a while. Afterwards, I had some closer friends, and I was allowed then to tell them. Yeah, so I had a couple friends who knew after a while. I told to my parents, this is just not sustainable. I can't live like this. Like, I can't have a disguised life. It's just not possible, right? But I think my parents just needed a transition to get accustomed to the idea, and I did need that too. So at the end, it worked out. It was not
You
easy at the
know,
beginning, but it worked out.
now the thing that stands out to me is that you actually listen to your parents. I would have been like, great, I have a studio apartment. They say don't tell. And I'm like, I'm not telling. And I tell everyone.
Oh my
It's
God.
like party at my house. My uncle comes at this time to check for boys. Cool. Like afterwards, come by. So you were like such a great
I was a
child. I
good
love
girl. I was a good girl, actually. Yeah, I rebelled much later when I was an adult, and I don't think that's fine. I started rebelling much later when I had nobody to refer to fight with. But, no, I think my parents were lucky. I really, really followed instructions, and honestly, I knew
Yeah.
the risks. I really knew what they were giving up for my
Yeah.
education, and I just didn't want to play with that. So I
Oh,
was
that's
very, very
amazing.
grateful. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. Let me just say that is amazing.
Thank you.
I was a different type of teenager. But like actually I was not boy crazy. I was more, all my rebellion was focused on me, determining my own freedom, being able to live on my own terms, do things on my own.
And that's
So I
healthy.
actually I ended up moving out of home at 17 and got my own apartment, my own place. So being 17, you don't know anything. So I moved out into an apartment on my own. And then the reality hits that you need to do everything yourself. Then I ended up getting roommates after that because I was like, wait, I need to apartments don't come fully furnished. I remember when I had to get an air mattress because I was like, I didn't know that beds didn't just fall out of the sky. And the first time I had to get cleaning materials, I was like, wait, like a mop and a broom don't come standard with the apartment. Like when you get an unfurnished apartment, this doesn't come standard with everything.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was beautiful but shocking aha moment. So
Part of
I
the
love
learning.
it.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
how do you go from this wonderful, well, I guess really challenging experience as a teenager to wow, I've moved so often. I would have thought that you would have wanted stability.
Yeah, I wanted stability from there. And I was actually starting to create my life in France. I finished my high school, did my studies, and I was really ready to settle. But then something started itching. But I did not know. And it's interesting how sometimes our there's like a superpower in us that is guiding our way.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's our soul, spirit, whatever, but it feels as if I had some invisible hand pushing me through a certain journey. But basically, I was going to university, and I was like, something is missing, and I thought I was going to go to like a meeting to get summer school, to just get like classes in the summer in English. I was like, maybe I should improve my English because I start forgetting my English. And then
Mm.
I went to the wrong meeting room without knowing. And it took me about half an hour to realize that was a meeting room to actually apply for a job in the United States. So, and by the
Oh
time,
my
and,
gosh.
and by the time I left the room, I was actually interviewing for the job and entered the whole selection process that took 3 months. And then I got the job, and actually I was sent to the United States to start working with this company. And it was just like, and this is where my nomadic journey continued, where I started working for this company and started traveling back and forth from the US to France, and became a manager, started training my people. It's a long story, but basically I was recruited by an American company to do door-to-door sales for a certain type of
Mm.
encyclopedia. By the way, you can see them on the top of these books here. The
Oh
ones that I used to
yes.
sell them door to door in the desert of
You
Utah.
used to sell encyclopedias? Oh my
Yes.
gosh, I even forget that we had a life before Google and we used to have encyclopedias. Whatever happened to encyclopedia
I'm
companies?
I'm not that old. Actually, those internet still existed and this company still exists. So I'm not gonna give you the
Oh
pitch,
my
but it's
gosh,
still useful for many reasons. But basically that
that
company
is
has
amazing.
really shifted me. Like, it took me out of my comfort zone. Just having to knock at doors to make a living was like a
Mm.
big transformation. And I
Oh, and we're
just
going to
believe
talk
that.
about that.
Yes, it was just huge. So yeah, so then by the time I decided to finish my MBA in the United States as well, I did my MBA in Arizona, and by then I was like, no, I need to go back to France and settle. That's where my friends are, and I'm tired of moving around. I'm just gonna settle. So I go to France. My parents are like, come on, why don't you try a diplomatic career? And I was like, no. I will never move again, and I will never give up my career for a man, and I will never be a diplomat or move around the world anymore. I had this passion for advertising, and I started my career in advertising. I'm like, I'm done. So I settled in France. I was on the process of even buying an apartment and all of that. And then I went to visit my parents by the time who were in Iran. And that's what I met for the man of my life. And I was like, oh no, this is bad. I'm going to have to move again. So when I said to my parents, I'll never
Wow.
do it, never say never, because at the end I quit my job, quit my life in France, and moved to Iran. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to keep moving like this because his job keeps taking him from a country to another. And we've been together now for over 12 years and did 3 countries so far. We're into our 4th move. And that's where I started my business, because I knew that I was not going to be able to keep my career on the move without
Oh, wow.
without having my own business. So this is basically, yeah, what happened. I've been doing
Wow.
that from a country to another. And then I met with other women in my situation who gave up their careers but couldn't keep up and just ended up in depression
Mm.
and very bad marriages, could not even leave their marriage because they were financially dependent. And
Mm.
that's when I started actually my podcast show called Tandem Nomads. And I started working with a lot of women. Now there's more and more men to help them build their businesses in a way that it fits to that lifestyle. So initially it was a lot of clients who were expats, but now
Yeah.
since COVID, I have more and more clients who are in the corporate world and are fed up with like
Yes.
they did it all. They reached a certain level at the corporate level and manage like C
Mm.
level, but they just want to now make their
Yeah.
life at the center of their career instead of the other way around. So it's interesting how
Mm.
things shifted, right? So
Mm. Wow, that is fascinating. Is your husband a diplomat?
not really. So technically, yes, officially on paper, yeah, but he doesn't have like, he works for the Chamber of Commerce and he helps basically companies from Austria do business in other countries. So he goes to those
Yeah.
countries and help make that bridge between both countries.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is really, really fascinating. I love how you're like, I don't want to do this, and then never say never, right? So
Yeah.
I've learned never to say, I will never do this, because the universe always, always calls my bluff in almost everything that I'm like,
Right?
I never want to do this. I will never. So I always say, I never say never
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
So my next question to you, before we jump into sales and marketing, because you have such an interesting story around sales, and I think that um, I'll share my other story of how like how I thought I was terrible at marketing and hated it, and that comes from cold calling. But before we jump into that, please can you tell us if money was if an alien landed on planet Earth and asked you to define money, how would you explain money to an alien?
hmm Money for me, I have two definitions, the pragmatic one and then the more like
Mm,
spiritual one. But for me, money is first of all a mean of exchange, is an exchange of
mm,
value, right? It's just a
mm,
tool to exchange value. But
yes.
as well, like the other thing for me is that I've learned over the time from many resources that I've been trying as I've been trying to grow spiritually and to grow in my journey. One of the most beautiful definitions of money that I've heard is money is energy. Money is
Mm,
the energy that are exchanged with each other. And for
yes.
me, that has really elevated the relationship that I have with money and with exchanging
Mm,
money with people, realizing that this is an exchange of energy. And this is why
mm,
it's really important to embrace money so that we can like really give and receive that energy in the most positive way.
mm, mm. So, wow, I really, really love this. I love that money is energy. We've spoken a lot about that on
Mhm.
this podcast, and money is a means of exchange, of value. So, I just wanted to say, what have you seen with entrepreneurs when it comes to building their businesses and selling and just the energy of being able to sell and the amount of money that one can bring in by just being able to sell your product and services? Why is it so important to know or to have, I guess, your own strategy around sales and marketing?
That's a big question. I could talk about in hours, but I want to start with
Go
something
for it.
unusual, actually, about like how to sell. Is that the question? Like how to sell?
Not really. My we'll get to that, but
Yeah.
my first question is like, what have I guess what I'm trying to get to is let me
Mhm.
rephrase that. Is like,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges around sales and marketing that make it difficult for people to bring in money into
Right.
their business? Because I think that that's a very big question as well. But if you can just share some of the things that you see with entrepreneurs that make it very, very hard for them to make money in their business because they're challenged with sales and marketing.
Okay. I want to start with the big things and then go to more practical things this time.
Yes.
For me, it's important in order to sell to love money.
Ooh, I did not expect that.
Because a lot of people
What?
say, and this is something that I used to say, I don't need money. I do this for the purpose. I do, and I believe in that, right? We want to
Mm,
do this because we want to help, we want to make an impact, etc. The
mm,
problem that I saw in my own journey, and now that I'm working with my clients, I see them with them. When we say, I don't need money, we're not welcoming money in our world,
mm,
right? So
mm,
seeing money as a dirty thing, as something either dirty or not necessary, I think is can actually disrupt that relationship with money and that energy. So first of all,
yes.
like really evaluating that relationship with money. How do we perceive money? Like it's just insane how this very innocent sentence is actually a beautiful sentence saying, I don't do this for money, is actually something that
Mm,
can have an impact on the way you do business. If you don't do this for
yes.
money, you're not much likely to make money. right?
I
So
love
I
that.
think that's really important to change that mindset. And it's not because you do it for money that you're not making an impact. I believe the greater the revenue you make, the greater the impact you make. Money is also a
Mm,
multiplier of impact. The more money you make, the more impact you can make in the world. I know that for me, my goals are
yes.
really big now compared to before, because I realize the more money and more wealth I'll have, the more I can
Yes.
focus on other things and not worry about making money. And I can do a lot of pro
Yes.
bono things. I can actually invest in nonprofits. I can do so much if I make a
Mm,
lot of money. There's so many things that I want to
yes.
do today that I can't do to help the causes that I believe in,
Mm,
because I need even more wealth to get there, right? If I
mm,
love money, I'll be able to attract that wealth, to be
mm,
impact, but also to be able to serve my current clients. And that's no matter what kind of business we do, it's important to love that money. I think that's,
mm,
as long
mm.
as we understand that the money we receive is an exchange of value again,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that is the one thing that I know that we don't hear enough about. I think we have
Oh,
to
no,
love
we
money.
don't.
We need
Oh
to
my
love money.
gosh. This is amazing. Like you've just said, I've never heard someone come right out and say that around marketing, that to be great at sales and marketing, you need to love money. But one of the things I fully agree with that, because I always say to people, you need to work on your wounds around money and your
Mhm.
trauma around money so that it doesn't block you when you show up and you're selling, because then you can easily share your pricing. You don't have to go back and forth. You can literally just tell people, this is what I do. This is how you pay me. This is how you find me. These are the payment plans if you need them. And I find that when people get to talk about the money aspect, it's the old thing where like you're taught to hide your pricing. People won't buy if you're so upfront around the pricing, if you're not vocal about it, all that. But actually, what's often happening in that case is that you are not giving people an opportunity to make a decision if this is for them or not.
Mhm.
So that's also a
Amen.
huge thing.
Yes. And
Oh my
yeah, I
gosh.
think that's, and the second thing for me is also self-love, right? If we don't have
Mm,
enough self-love, it means we don't have enough self-worth, which will
mm,
lead to not ask for the right price for what we do. And therefore
mm.
not be comfortable with asking with the value that that we actually are worth. If we don't have
Yes.
self-worth, we cannot ask for the right price that we are worthy of. And I think that's also another thing that's really important. On top of, like, there's so many marketing stuff I could share about selling, but these can work really well, but not as well as when we actually, if we don't love money, don't have a high self-worth around money, that can really disrupt the effectiveness of any strategy around how
Mm,
to get money, how to sell, etc. Right? And this is something that I
yeah.
wish I had learned earlier in my journey. I know that I've been on a quest around for many years to figure out, okay, where is it that I'm feeling blocked? And I realize, as much as I'm all about giving value to people, I've
Mm,
forgotten to actually love myself first.
mm,
And
mm,
that's when the
mm,
exchange of money becomes really fruitful, is when it comes from a
mm.
place where we want to serve as much as we want to be served.
Yeah, and I think most of us have been taught that if you are truly of service, you have to do it you just have to do it without asking for anything. You have to be just okay with getting whatever little you get, really, to be honest. So there's always this disconnect. It's like, oh, people are going to think that I'm in it for the money. Well, if the money is not a huge part of why I'm in it for, then how am I going to grow and scale my business? Because
Mhm.
it's not just, and I always say to people, it's like going in, giving a service. It's not just me. Just like how earlier I was saying, oh, it's morning in Mexico. I'm not a morning person. And thank God, though, like I've got team members that take the calls and handle everything. Those team members are people that need to get paid. If there's no money in the business, there's nothing that moves forward in the business,
Yeah.
you know? So we often don't think about that. But then it comes to my next question. which is, okay, so before I even move on to the next question, let me ask this one, which is, I'm sure most people are thinking this. What are some of the first steps? So can you give us like 3 steps that you took to loving money so that you could start to feel comfortable with selling and allowing money into your life?
Because you talk so well about trauma, I just love in your podcast how you talk about that. And I think it has a lot to do with that. I never looked at it this way. But thanks to you, I'm like, oh my God, I did not even realize we could actually talk about money trauma until I listened to your podcast. But I realized it's related to something that I've learned. And I've been reading a lot of books and actually there's a podcast I recommend called from Jim Fortin. I don't know if you know Jim Fortin.
No.
So it's one of these great leaders and coaches in the field of trauma and healing
Oh,
and a
wow.
lot of things. Like he's a hypnotherapist basically who managed now
Okay.
coaching people to live up to their full leadership potential and everything.
Oh, wow.
But one of the things when I followed all these resources, his resources plus others, I realized one thing. And it's going to be a complicated sentence, but hopefully you follow with me. I realized that it all matters, all these traumas and all these limiting beliefs, it all matters until it doesn't matter. That's when you're free, so that you can finally focus on what truly matters. It all
I
matters
agree.
until it doesn't matter, so that you could focus on
Yeah.
what truly matters. And I think the first step to answer your question for me is about self-awareness, having the self-awareness of where are we stuck, and just that. The problem with that, and you will tell me if you agree, when we start realizing our traumas, and a lot of my traumas were open by working on my self-awareness. I was like, oh my God, I did not even realize I had so much traumas. But then the problem with that is that then we might just get stuck there. It's not because you have a trauma that you need to be a prisoner of it. Just being aware of it and then move on,
Yeah.
right? And then you move on. It's not because it
Yeah.
was like that. It's not because it's in your cell's memories that it has to become your destiny. And I think that
I agree to a point with that. I think that the reason why people get stuck in that is because they haven't learned how to integrate the trauma. I do believe that I used to believe that there were some things that happened to me that were so unforgivable that I would never get over them, you know. But as I started to heal and integrate the trauma, I realized that, like, now I talk about these things and I'm like, whatever, I can't even believe I thought that, right? But that was like, because that comes from healing the wounds. So I agree that self-awareness is one part, but then going into the body to integrate that trauma is another part of it. And once it's integrated, I don't want to say it doesn't matter and invalidate experiences, but what I want to say is it's not as charged, so it doesn't have your full undivided attention. And because it no longer has your full undivided attention, you're able to put your focus elsewhere and do other things. Like, for years, because I was in so much pain, I couldn't focus on a lot of things except my pain. I think that's what trauma does. It keeps you, like you said, keeps you there. It keeps you frozen in the moment. So no matter what is happening, you come back to this moment, and it's constantly looking at life from these points of views. And as you start to free yourself from those points of views, you're able to look at life in a different way, because adult you is dealing with life in the present and looking at it through the lens of the present moment, not through the lens of the past and the things that happened to you.
And that's where I say, like when I said, and that's when you start seeing what matters, truly matters. What you're saying, for me, that journey at the end, it's ultimately about figuring out who you truly are once you're from those traumas, because those traumas become so much part of our identity without us realizing, until, as you said, we integrated them. Once we are aware of them and did the work to free ourselves from them and accepted them. Sometimes it's just accepting those traumas,
Amen.
right? And welcoming them, but not as a weight, but more as become a strength, rather. Like, I believe that some of my traumas have actually become a strength from the moment I accepted them. They actually
Mm,
made the rich person I am today. And I think once we
mm.
do that, that's when we start stepping into our full identity and stepping into who we
Yes.
truly want to be and living up to our full
Yes.
potential. And I think when I work with my clients, one of the first steps when we work on the business and the branding and all and marketing is figure out who you are and what is it
Mm.
that big mission that you have, that big message that you want to share with the world beyond whatever
Yes.
you sell. Like, I could sell
Yes.
anything. I know that my mission statement is to help people live up to their full potential. And that what makes me excited.
Yes.
Today, I do it through marketing and coaching, marketing and business coaching. Tomorrow, I could do it somewhere
Yeah.
in a different way. But that is
Yes.
my thing, like helping people
Yes.
live up to their full potential. So I think
Yes.
we
Oh,
can
I
do
love
that.
that.
Yeah.
You've just defined your zone of genius. I love the Big Leap, right? Like that's one of my
Oh, yeah.
favorite books
We
by
have that
Gay
in
Hendricks.
common. Yeah.
Right? Like so many people that I love and adore love that book. It's absolutely incredible. And I've often spoken about it, but in our property podcast with my business partner, how that book was when I read it, like completely life-changing for me. Uh, but one of the things that you just described is your zone of genius. And what
Mhm.
I love about that is that your zone of genius is focused on the who, not on the what. It's like
Exactly.
your zone of genius is helping people live a life of a purpose, like stepping into being their best selves. I'm like ruining everything that you've said, so please forgive me. But,
No problem.
it's just really stepping into that. And I love that you've defined that as opposed to my zone of genius is marketing, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It doesn't even make like it just I love that because it's not I wasn't going to say it doesn't even make sense when you do that because it does, but I think that this is so much more expansive because like you said you can do it in any industry. Doesn't have to do in any sector of a person's business. It doesn't have to do with just the marketing and sales.
Yeah. And I think you can expand. You talked about expansion. I think as human beings,
Mm,
we continuously expand. I would feel so sorry
yeah,
if I did not continuously grow. It can feel so exhausting
yeah,
sometimes. Is it
yes,
going to end? When is the learning going to end? Right. But
exactly.
I realize, no, it's actually so beautiful. We keep growing. But one of the areas where I think is the most important to really put as much focus as we can is figuring out who we want to be. And that will help any other
Mhm.
decision that we make, because that's going to be our
Yes.
compass for everything and every decision. And if we don't
Yes.
have that clear, it's okay, by the way, because I feel so many people
Mm,
put that pressure and figure out who they are. I think it's
mm,
not have that answer as long as you just have the joy and the pleasure and the excitement of figuring it out by just
mm.
do things,
Yes.
start somewhere, do something. And then the more you do, the more the answers will come to you. Don't think about it.
Mm,
I'm like,
mm.
thinking is not going to get you the answers, but doing will.
Oh, I love that. So, self-awareness, and then you start doing, and
Mhm.
it helps you figure out where you're going. Um,
Exactly.
so now you've done, when someone has done this and they feel like I'm at the point where I'm starting to love money and I'm integrating my traumas and I'm ready to do this, then how do they craft a marketing strategy? And especially one that allows them to build a lifestyle build a business that aligns to their lifestyle, like you said.
All right. There's multiple components to this question. But the first thing,
Yes.
the simple answer, and simple, but not that simple. But I'm going to start with first the marketing and then the lifestyle component, because these are two
Mm,
different things somehow. So in terms of you have a business, and even if you have one right now that, and you feel like you're not having consistent results of it, usually it comes from a few things. I always say there's actually my three C's to a successful
mm,
portable business. And actually I can lead to a
yes.
workbook if you want to go deep through the exercises. But for me, a business that
Oh,
works
yes. Please do share
needs,
that.
yeah. So it's on tandemnomads.com/3C, and you'll be able to download it there. But basically for me, a business is successful or struggles due to three factors. The first one is either lack of clarity. So you need clarity
Mm.
to be able to have really results, and clarity on multiple things. And
Yeah.
I'll give you some examples. And the second is consistency. Like, consistency is really important to getting results. Most of the companies I worked with, from the biggest one to the smallest one, when they struggle, often when we analyze is, okay, they're struggling with being consistent with one of their strategies. And the third one is
Yes.
conversion, not being able to convert their efforts into results. So
Mm.
the
Mm.
first step is really about clarity. Before even we get into
Yeah.
consistent conversion, being clear about who is your ideal client, being clear about what is your business model, being clear about what is your promise and the value proposition of your business, what is the transformation you provide to your clients, right? What are the situation before they come to you, and how do you take them to the next level, and what is the solution, what is the result after the work with you? And it's interesting how many people you ask, what do you do? They cannot answer that question properly. And what problem
Mm.
you solve, usually they would tell you about all the results they give to people, but they cannot explain the pain points, the
Yeah.
challenges that the clients have. So my biggest tip for those who are starting, even those who are struggling and still have a business, ask yourself, who is that one ideal client, just one, and what is their
Mm.
biggest challenges? And talk about the pain. Don't talk about the results. Talk about the pain. What is the pain that you help them to solve? And
Mm.
once you do
Mm.
that, everything else will be much simpler. And it's interesting how
Mm.
even like even very experienced people struggle sometimes to do it, and that's why they're having
Yeah.
consistent results. So I think this is really important to understand. And then and for me, marketing is about answering simple four questions. Number one, who
Yes.
is your ideal client? Number two, where is your ideal client? Number
Mm.
three, how do you turn them into clients? And number four is the one that people forget all the time,
Yes.
is how do you keep your current clients happy so that they can
Mm.
bringing you other clients and also coming back
Yes.
to you. Marketing is
Yes.
not about selling. Marketing is about serving.
Mm.
Marketing
I
is about
love that.
nurturing. It's
I
about
love that.
creating a relationship. This is what marketing is
Yes.
about. Build that
Yes.
relationship. Focus on giving
Yes.
value and building that, nurturing that audience, nurturing that network that you have with
Mm.
care, love, and lots of values, so that people trust you, so that they can know
Mm.
you, like you, trust you. And I think this is really
Mm.
important. Coming from a place energetically that's all about serving
Mm.
and being there to build that relationship will really help to get more results, I think. I think this is really,
Mm.
really important.
I
And
love this guidance, this advice. Like, I think it's so, so powerful what you've just said.
thank you.
Um, I think, especially the last part, I think that most people don't see, like, I think it's almost a little bit like dating, right? Like, some people, like, oh, now that I've got the girl, I can just relax. I can just let
No,
it go and let myself go, or now that I've got the guy, like, it's not a big deal. But I think that, like, it's always about showing up and nurturing, even in those relationships, also showing up fully. And I think that we tend to have this thing of, like, we need to go chase the next client, we need to chase the next client. But how do you offer value to your current clients? How do you keep helping them grow? How do you keep building them up? That becomes so, so important and so powerful.
I agree.
So I love that guidance. Wow. So once people have that, they can then start to craft a marketing strategy. I'm very, very fascinated and want to talk about this, Amel, which let me explain why before I even ask my next question. When I started in terms of marketing, I'd look outside of everybody.
Mm.
I'd look outside of myself. And okay, so let me, one of my businesses, Speak to Be Free, which I started right after business school. And because I'd gone to business school, I'd been taught all the fancy ways during the MBA program of how to market. And I thought, oh, you have to be visible, you have to be everywhere. Can I tell you that I was trying to show up and post and doing it all myself, by the way, on like 20 different platforms. When I start, seriously, When I started, I had 20 different platforms, and I would force myself every day. And I'd say to myself, why are you so terrible? Like, this is not so hard. Just show up and post on 20 different platforms. And I had like 5 or 6 different blogs that I wanted to comment on and build relationships with bloggers on. It was a mess. It's like I was constantly just trying my very, very best, to be like everywhere. And I would burn out and just crash and burn because I couldn't do it. And for years, I convinced myself that I was terrible at marketing. I was terrible at selling, because I didn't see that it was because of the insane pressure that I put on myself, for one. But then that business, when it didn't work out, I started another business called Van Consulting, and I went into real estate. And there we're taught I had a 10% ownership in a real estate agency in Boston, Massachusetts. And there we were taught how to do cold calling and to also train the team to do cold calling. I'm not a cold calling person. I'm not a direct mail person. That my entire nervous system got extremely dysregulated, but I'd force myself to cold call, and I'd work myself up. And the idea was that if you could cold call to 100 clients, 100 people, then at least if you're doing like 50 cold calls a day, 100 cold calls, you just come in, you sit down, and you just pick up the phone, you keep calling, and you never ever take a no. That's how you're going to succeed. And I could just never get beyond like even 5 calls in a day. Like I just freeze up. So when I started Wealthy Money, even I was convinced I sucked at sales and marketing. I couldn't do it. So what would you say to someone who is starting out like me and has these insane marketing strategies? Like, I wish that someone had just set me down. Like, how do you then craft a marketing strategy that is in alignment with you? Because here's what I came to understand and what I tell all my clients. Everyone is good at marketing. You market and you sell yourself all the time. Yet at home as a mom, you're selling your kids on something every day. You're selling them on the notion that wearing clothes is good, that going to school is great. You're selling as a wife, you're selling an idea to your husband or to the house, how the household should run or what you want. To your parents, you're selling something about you as a daughter, how they should treat you, all these things. So what would you say to someone starting out who was at the point that I was at? And I was at that point for years, right? And then how would you then suggest that they move into figuring out how to craft a strategy that works for them?
I think this is such an important question. It's such a good question, because that's why so many solo entrepreneurs, small business owners end up as burnt out as the job they used to be, that they left to have a better life.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm all about. It's like, what's the point of starting a business if it's to get in the same situation as before, right? So it's really important for me. And this is why I'm really specialized in making people create a business around that lifestyle. Make your business work for you and not the other way around.
Yes.
You're not working for your business has to work for you. So in order to be able to create those strategies, you need, first of all, as we talked before, to really know who you are, right? And sometimes to go through a phase of experimentation like you did. You might have hated it, but I'm sure that all the trials and experiments you did today are helping you to know what you're good at, what you love, what you don't love. So it's okay. I think that if at the beginning you're hustling a little bit, don't make it become a thing, right? We should not work hard to have results in our businesses. But what we
So
should
for
do,
me, sorry to interrupt. For me, I wasn't just hustling a little bit, because I came from a space of trauma.
Yeah.
I had a really, really big, not good enough wound. I would shame myself at the end of every day for not posting on the 20 social media platforms. And that's when that's when even MySpace was around. I was like, MySpace. I found the most arbitrary things, like even Reddit threads. I need to post on Reddit more, build relationships with people on Reddit. It was insane. It was Instagram. It was Instagram. It was Facebook.
Yeah.
It was create a Facebook page, Facebook groups. I had a list of Facebook groups that I needed to post in. Every kind of thing. And when I didn't do that at the end of the day, I would shame myself and tell myself, you're so terrible at this. You're never going to get good at this. This is awful. But that's also coming from my upbringing, right? And from my trauma. It's like I was shamed to get things done instead of like motivated or inspired or like positive thinking.
So I hope that our listeners, if they identify with that, can already like realize that this should not be the way it should be, right? Not shame yourself. And I have a simple answer to that. Here is the thing. For me, it's not about quantity. It's about consistency. Do a little bit of something, but do it consistently. For example, with my clients, we only have 3 marketing strategies. That's it. And you stick to them for a while. When I say hustle a little bit, it means you're going to test them. You're going to test them for, let's say, 2-3 months, and then measure if it works. If it doesn't work, you're going to shift and figure out what you're going to shift instead of doing everything, right? So this is, I think, what I mean by you don't need to work hard to make your strategies work for you. You just need to pick. You need to pick what you're going to try or test if you're just starting out, and then stick to it for a while. For me, the most important part of a success is not working hard. That's a belief that we keep telling ourselves and have been taught that we need to work hard. I think what we need is to be committed. And when you're committed, you do what it takes while still being aligned with who you are. Like know who you are, know what works for you. And by the way, to go back to your initial question as well, you need to know what works for you. For example, if you like to speak, then speaking engagement might be a good strategy for you. If you like to write, maybe writing might be a good strategy for you. If you like to connect with other people, if you like to meet with other people, then networking might be a great strategy for you. If you like to be behind the computer, I have some clients who actually love to do coding and love to do all those tech stuff. If you like that, then maybe Facebook ads or Instagram ads are the right thing for you. So know where's that zone. We were talking before about the zone of genius. Know what's that zone of genius that you have, and then capitalize on it to be able to find your clients. Now, when you do that, make sure that you're actually capitalizing in places where your clients are actually spending time, right? So, for example, if you like to speak, if you want to be effective and not exhaust yourself, you might start first by doing some market research. Understand all the events where your ideal clients go to. Understand all the platforms that your ideal clients are consuming content so that you can speak effectively. Although at the beginning, again, you might want to trial, like it's trial and error, right? You might not know it. You might go to a platform and realize, actually, that's not my ideal client, but it's okay. You didn't waste your time. You've practiced speaking, you've practiced connecting with others. So it's, like you were saying, it's not about shaming yourself. Take this as part of the process. I think this is really important, but figure out what you're good at and what you love to do, because if you're doing something you don't love to do, then it will be very hard for you to stay consistent and keep going at it throughout this journey. And sometimes it takes some time as well to figure out what we like to do and what we know, what we love to do. So give yourself a bit of grace if you're just starting out, to figure it out by just doing again. So if it's about doing, don't overthink it. I've heard so many people overthink. Should I do that? Should I do that? Should I do that? Just do something. If you don't have the answer, just start somewhere, and then you'll know if that's the right thing for you.
Oh, I love this so much. This is so incredible. Great advice, Amel. So just my last point on that before I ask my final question, or really final 2 questions. I just feel like once I started to do that, I remember one day just sitting when I started Wealthy Money, I said, okay, I've registered 4 businesses in different parts of the world, and I've shut down all of them. How am I going to do this differently? And I just remember thinking, I'm going to shut out the whole world. I'm going to listen to what I want to do. And I'm going to start with the one platform that I love. with the one medium that feels great to me. And I just realized, actually, no, I love talking, I love writing. So that became my mediums. It's just like, I love doing interviews, I love being in conversation, all those things. Some people genuinely don't like that. And I realized that actually, even how I write books and write things, I love interacting and sharing with people what I'm doing. So everything for me is very much interactive and feedback. If I can do that, that's when I'm able to really market at my best. So can you please share with us 3 lessons that you've learned about traveling or money or marketing, or the combination of all 3 on this journey of building a business and helping entrepreneurs build their businesses?
So many things, right? It's a whole journey, but I would go back to a bit of a summary of a lot of things that we talked about today. But the first one, I think, is really self-love and self-awareness. Like, it's really important to work on ourselves to be able to show up to our full potential, right? Really working on our self-love and self-worth is really important. And knowing, what is that impact we want to make? What is that zone of genius, as you call it, that we want to hone in no matter what we're doing, right? And that really helps, especially when we have a business, to know what's the mission statement of that business. No matter how this business will evolve, that is the mission statement of your business. And then the second, for me, especially in hard times, funny enough, for me, it's gratefulness. Like being able to actually, one of the hardest times of my life, most of the hardest time of my life, but I remember once I was going through a really hard time, and I really had a voice come to me. And it was like I was saying to myself, thank you for this darkness. Thank you for this moment that I'm in, because I know that I'm going to learn. So I know this is going to bring me to a space that will be so much more powerful. So I know that it's hard to say that, but being grateful even in the hard times is important. But also that attitude with the way we do business when we're with our clients, it's important. I really think that every client that we have, we never dismiss it. Never, it's so important to fully love everything that we have at the moment so that we can attract more of it. And that includes our clients, because often once we get the clients, we forget. We start moving on to the next thing. And I think it's really important to nurture our community, nurture our network, nurture our people, because that is a place of gratefulness that will attract even more great stuff and more abundance. So I think that's really important. And it brings joy. Otherwise, if we're always chasing the next thing, and that's the thing about entrepreneurs, we're always chasing the next thing, right? And if we're always doing that, we're never living in the full present moment. And I think this is also another thing. We can be a visionary, we can keep innovating, moving on, but let that space of being grateful for what we achieved already. This is really important. And the third one,
I love that.
The third one is, I love this expression that says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most time with.
Amen. I believe that. Hey, I truly, truly believe that.
So surround yourself with the right people and ditch those that don't serve you. And that's it. Because whatever messaging, whatever energy is around you will affect you. So choose wisely the people you choose your journey with, choose wisely the time that you spend with people, and really only focus on those who are here to support you and that you want to serve as well, right? Again, it's an exchange. It's just like money. So make sure that you are with people that you want to be there for, even when you have maybe to sacrifice time. Sometimes, it's really important to know who you want to do this for, because you can't do it all the time for everybody. So choose your people wisely. Really important.
Wow. Thank you for that. That is absolutely incredible. And Amel, how do people get hold of you? And if you don't mind sharing your podcast and sharing the workbook once more, guys, we will have all these details in the podcast description. So wherever you are, just look at the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, listening on Podbean, iTunes, or Spotify, please look in the description for all these links.
I love it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope everyone who've been listening have had a lot of value for you, and I look forward to connecting with you. The best way to find me is to go to tandemnomads.com, and you'll find all the information there. But I also have a special workbook where I share with you all my steps and my process
Oh,
that
I
I've been
love
sharing a
that.
little bit about. So you go to tandemnomads.com/3C, and you'll learn with exercises and a process how to build a successful portable business that helps you generate
Mhm.
revenue and impact while still aligning it with your lifestyle. I think this is really important.
Oh,
So I hope to meet you
love it.
there. And when you download the workbook, you'll have my email as well. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amal. This has been such a pleasure. I love that we're having this conversation around sales and that we had this conversation about sales and marketing and traveling. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you once more, Money Magicians, for joining us. This has been an incredible episode, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode. Otherwise, do leave us a comment on YouTube. You guys do so well with that. So share the podcast with friends and family. Leave us comments on other platforms as well. If you're listening in on Podbean or iTunes, Spotify, please share with family and friends. Let them know about this podcast. It could really, really help others, especially this episode. And do check out Amal. She also has an incredible podcast, and I've been featured on that podcast. So I really, really want you guys to check it out. I'll see you in the next episode, Money Magicians.
Bye.
Bye.